Good evening, Razorback fans. Welcome to the one, the only Hog Talk podcast, live from the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios. We are part of the Believe and Buzz Radio networks, where you can hear us on all podcast platforms, as well as Buzz to 106.7 in Central Arkansas. So please like, rate, review our podcast. All live shows are presented to you by Arkansas Brewing Company in downtown Ozark. I am Porter Hayes, and alongside me is Adam Hall. We're brought to you by Bet Online. Get the latest odds and lines and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino card games available to play right from your phone. So head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get on the action. Remember to use the promo code BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Adam, 28-6, Kent State. But I put this tweet out. I can't remember the last time the SEC as a whole has kind of struggled the first 2 weeks. And I know Georgia's doing the Georgia thing against that weak schedule. But you cap it off with the Texas win over Alabama. And I know this resonates with Arkansas fans, but how much arrogance do you think the Texas fans have today, knowing, one, they're coming into the SEC next year, but more so, they can kind of claim, did they end the Bama and the Nick Saban dynasty?
Yeah, one of the texts I sent out in my sports group chat with some buddies was Texas could lose out the rest of the season, and their fans will still stick their hat on going into Tuscaloosa and winning. It does not matter what happens the rest of the season. We saw it even with the players after the game when they were celebrating that they're ready for the SEC. The SEC is not ready for them, blah, blah, blah. And, I get it. You have every right to say that to an extent. No, you didn't beat Georgia, and they're at the top of the SEC, but you still went into Tuscaloosa, and you beat Nick Saban in Texas.
And I told you before the season that with all the negativity surrounding Alabama, with all the stuff that chip on their shoulder, and they put out that hype video like they're back, they're all right. We're down, but we're not out. I said, if they don't respond this year and make the college football playoff, or heaven forbid Texas beats them, and they didn't just beat them. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the last time in a non-national championship or playoff setting that Bama was dominated like that. I told you before we started recording, Quinn Ewers makes 2 more throws, and this was a rout. It was a blowout. Sayonara. See you later. It was already bad enough as it was, but just to see them, it's almost like Jordan's years with the Wizards, and you see a guy going out, your Tiger, trying to, do something, and after the Masters, still trying to compete, and it's past their prime, but you just keep it. It's almost like that's what we're watching with Alabama. But it's going to get very interesting, especially with the next couple of years in the SEC. And that's the last thing you want to do is give Texas any kind of motivation coming into the SEC. Well,
especially, when that next year's conference schedule was released and Texas being on Arkansas's, everybody, yes, we can talk about when Texas came into Fayetteville and the 40-21 or 41-20 win, whatever it was. But that was 2 completely different teams from where we stand right now.
Oh, yeah. Crazy.
If I've said, I've been on record saying that with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC, now was the time for Arkansas when it came to recruiting, just to try to take that next level before they get here. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It's just nothing that we've seen it's going to show that that's happened, and Texas has taken that step.
Yeah, and moving on back to the Arkansas game, 28-6 over Kent State. Another kind of struggle when you look at the stats. It was a lackluster performance. Let's call it what it is. Yeah, win. You won 28-6. Yes, other teams, you can slice this and dice this to make it feel how you want to. But when I looked at the game and I watched the game, you played a lesser opponent and you played worse. That you can't, I know you didn't have Rocket Sanders, but I'll tell you what, AJ Green looked. I mean, he should have got more than 15 touches. I mean, that's just, everybody was talking about KJ Jefferson but yes, you're put in a position where KJ had to take over. You don't need to be doing that against Kent State. And the fact that people saying, well, we're not doing this and we're not, you shouldn't have to against Kent State. You should run your vanilla defense, base offense defense, and even with your second team, the second team should have won 28-6 in this setting, and it's just to see not one guy over 100 yards against Kent State.
And I mean, I think a lot of us too, we expected, I know you and me had some pretty high scores as well as the majority of most other people predicting that. I mean, there's a lot of people out there like, we should be mad if we punt. And then there we were on the first possession.
Exactly. 3 and out. I know. And I want to put a disclaimer out there. I did say I just kept it up because of it was, but I didn't know. I had tuned the game in. I had to stream it. And by the time I got on there, I seen them punting. And I had just assumed that Kent State had went 3 and out. I didn't realize they'd already had a first down, and it was in that part of the game. But, then Arkansas goes 3 and out, and you're like, what's going on? And you couldn't. It's one thing if they stack the box on you and you had troubles last week against Western Carolina, but when you can't set an edge, you can't set your tone on what you're wanting to do in a game against Kent State. I mean, you only had 198 yards total rushing, and then you had KJ Jefferson had 136 yards passing, and more so. You weren't able to get KJ off the field. That's the thing. 13 carries and was getting. He got hit hard a couple of times, and I think we all want to praise that hit last week at him, but he got hit a couple of times, and you're not just going to be able to let everybody bounce off of you. I know he's a guy, but man, I think his ego got a little bit to him this week because that guy bounced off of him last week, and then you seen him take a couple hits like that in yesterday's game. And I'm telling you, you got to be careful when you're playing like that.
Yeah. We saw, this game, he took out, the strong safety for Kent State with the hit. And I think he took him out a second time later in the game, but there was a couple of hits that KJ took where he didn't hop up like he had been, he was getting help from the linemen to him up, whatever. And there was one time I saw him raise his arm up after they had helped him up, and I thought we were about to see Criswell. But KJ stayed in. But, against Kent State, especially a team that had just given up 700 yards of offense to UCF, you didn't want to see that yesterday. You didn't want to see KJ on his back. And then also, there were just some dumb penalties. I know we only had, 4 penalties, but – 3rd and goal from the 1 or half-yard line even, and you get a delay of game. I was already having flashbacks at that moment of Texas A&M, but then you just go ahead and throw a false start out there, which, or a delay of game, which I know we ended up scoring, but, it's just not what you wanted to see.
Yeah, it was just a weird vibe. And maybe it was, you just look at that. There's always that 1 week in the college football year that's just crazy. And maybe hopefully that's the mulligan. Hopefully that's the one that, all right, let's really shake this game off and just move on to BYU. And BYU doesn't look any better than they did last year. So that's another plus because – you just think about your first game back in Fayetteville. You got to go down to Little Rock, and it's crazy. They played better in Little Rock away from Fayetteville than they did yesterday, and it's something that you thought they would come out with a little bit more fire, a little bit more passion, and like I told you, if you're going to want to prove, and again with my standards, a lot of people change this and that. I still hold my standards as a 9-win team, so I'm going to judge this game and judge their performance on me expecting them to be a 9-win team. And you didn't meet that expectations. Defense played really good, but there was times where, the first couple of drives, they were letting some guys get behind them. There was some balls that, just a little bit of this would be an SEC caliber team, would those have been touchdowns? So, that's something that, yes, they held them on defense, but the goal line stand was really, really good. No matter what team you're playing, that was probably the bright spot of the defensive day was that goal line stop, because you didn't give up. You didn't just say, okay, let them score, or they got in the end zone. So that was a big plus.
Yeah, there was definitely some plays that Kent State had, some sideline catches, some catch and runs that I thought that if that had been an SEC opponent, could have been taken to the house or just taken for a lot bigger of a gain. Just because we weren't, Kent State's obviously not going to have the speed that we're going to see here in a couple weeks, but. I tip my hat to the defense. I mean, holding to 200 yards. We're first, I think, tied for first in the country in turnover differential. So, I mean, they're getting it done in that aspect. It's just, early in the game, that time of possession for Kent State was just crazy, the lopsidedness on it.
Yeah, and again, it's one of the things. It's it's not how you start, how you finish, but it's a 28-6 game. I mean, it's just like that was it felt like it was 21-14. It just felt like, even though the final score was 28-6, it was like there was times where it felt like Kent State was in the game, and because Arkansas wasn't putting the ball in the end zone. And you can't help to think, because we get caught up into this, these scapegoats or these excuses that, well, it's Kent State, and this O-line, I don't know what's going on. And something I kind of want to touch on is the fact that in my opinion, second game of the season against Kent State, the coach shouldn't be getting to the point where he's getting testy about getting questioned about his team's performance, because you should have been able to go out there and dominate. And when you're making statements like, well, we know we have a left guard and a right guard, and we got a running back and a quarterback, we're just trying to piece together a team. Well, y'all weren't saying that 2 weeks ago when we were hyping up, saying this team's got depth and we're going to have the best offense. We're going to, and you're basing this off of games against Western Carolina and Kent State. You didn't go to 2 war games with LSU or Mississippi State or Alabama. You're coming to this conclusion after 2 games against Kent State and Western Carolina, and that's concerning. And I think as media, they should. What do you expect the media to do? Sit back, not ask the questions, as in, this is what we've seen from the game. Hey, we got LSU in 2 weeks. Or wait till the wheels fall off and then say, hey, what happened? I mean, that's the part that kind of puzzled me on how he's reacted to this. It's like, but then again, it's kind of like when you're frustrated and things are going wrong, that's the last thing you want to hear answer question to, especially on things that's going wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, you could tell that the frustration's there, and I truly don't think that he needed to come back and apologize for it. He got the question that he may not want to have been asked, but you've got to expect that question's going to come.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, and if they had gone out there and won, just say 56-6, whatever, you wouldn't have had those questions. But you didn't, so you're going to have to answer up to it. I know after game 1, there was a lot of talk of, I think that Arkansas could beat LSU. I don't know, because even with what, LSU had to open up their whole, or I'm not going to say their whole playbook, but, they came in playing Florida State, who is now ranked 4th in the country. And then they turned around yesterday and hung 70 plus on Kennesaw State or whoever, but that's what they're supposed to do. They weren't struggling. So I look at yesterday as, we took a step or 2 back. And, we had these questions, all the hype of the offensive line and, the depth chart set and all. No, there was some speculation. There were some questions about the offensive line, and we're now seeing that it is not as solid as it seemed to have been 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and you got BYU coming in, 6:30, on Saturday, and they've played Sam Houston and Southern Utah, and they blew out Southern Utah 41-16, and then had a squeaker of a game against Sam Houston, 14-0. But this is going to be a high-powered passing offense. I mean, their LJ Martin is their leading rusher right now with only 119 yards on 22 attempts. They've only ran the ball 57 times this season, opposed to they've thrown the ball. Keaton Slovis has 493 yards passing and 4 touchdowns on their average 21 points off of or they have a total of 21 points off of turnover. So I know this is going to be a closer game than what we thought at the beginning of the season. I was thinking this could be 21-point game. And I thought that, like I said, progressing into the LSU game, you got to really put your foot down. And it still could be. Arkansas finds its groove. This could be a blowout. But they have to find their groove. They have to block. They have to set the edge. They have to set the tone, because I'm telling you right now, this can't turn into another season where you're living and dying off your defense and hoping you can win off 21 points a game. You can't do that. You're not going to do that this year in the SEC.
No. And I mean, it's hard to, you look at the national rankings and it's hard to say, who's where after 2 games when it comes to stats. But, total yards per game, BYU's at 110th with 325.5 yards per game. Arkansas's only at 98, so it's not that much different.
Yeah.
Coming in on the defense, I mean, points allowed were 14th at 9.5. They're 10th with 8 points per game allowed. So, but a lot of that's just your competition.
Yeah, exactly. And go ahead.
No, it's. I think it's either going to be one of those games that it's close. I'm still chalking it up a win. It's either going to be close and ugly, or at some point Arkansas will break it open.
Yeah,
finally, because of this running around of we haven't opened up the whole playbook, or we haven't this, we haven't that. That's when you're struggling. You can't, like you said, you can't run your base offense and defense. You don't need to open things up. You shouldn't be having. I mean, it's. If you can't do that, why are we talking about opening things up when we can't even do the basics?
Yeah. But then again, it's like, all right, when do you start working on that? When do you open up the playbook? You can't just wait till LSU game to open up your playbook. You can practice this all day long, but you're going to have to practice in a game setting. And I mean, that's the thing. So I think this BYU game, we're going to see more rushing. We're going to see more blitzes. I hope we see more. Because you can't, again, cruise through these first 3 games and then just jump right into the deep end against LSU. Whether how LSU's been playing or not, that's irrelevant, because the talent and, the strength of this LSU game. Because I'll tell you what, if you're running the ball and you're getting negative 11, 30 yards rushing in the half, what's that going to be against LSU? Where are you going to be? Are you going to be down 21-0? I mean, you got to be able to establish things and, yes, get things going, because when you're opening up your playbook too late in the season, you're all it takes is, especially against LSU, and you look at that 4-game stretch, 1 turnover could cost you the game. And you bring in a new playbook, or you start getting cued and opening things up when they haven't really run the reps in a game time speed setting, that could be costly when it comes to game time.
Yeah, and one thing that I don't think we've seen yet, and it's kind of goes hand in hand with what we saw in the Alabama-Texas game last night, is like last night I didn't see Milroe. He was just always taking deep shots. Didn't really seem like he was getting anything over the middle, and I feel like it's been that same way for KJ. We haven't used the tight ends. I mean, I know that Haas got 3 catches yesterday for 26 yards, but the tight ends have not been utilized for what I thought would happen with the talent that we have there. And then bringing in Morgan from Stanford as a coach in the tight ends, I just thought we were going to see a different dimension, or get back to how things were when Arkansas was considered tight end U for those years. I expected to see more over the middle. Some slants, I expect to see Tesla a lot more over the middle versus deep shots, which I mean, you're going to throw – if he's got somebody beat on speed, obviously you're going to throw him out there. But I just expected to see a lot more over the middle from him.
Well, yeah, and here – this is what I brought – you bring up a good point because I'm telling you right now, if you're not running slants, that the linebackers are going to be able to cheat up and box you up. If you start running slants, now the linebackers at least have to back up a little bit and respect the slant. It all goes back to what we were talking about preseason of respecting the passing game of Arkansas and the three, the facets of the game: deep ball, your slants, or your outs, and then your tight ends. You got to be able to have your slot guys running slants. You got to be able. And one last topic: if he's not able to throw on the run and he's really struggling on those short throws like that. You're not running those routes. You got to get that timing down. So I hope that we see a totally different game because this is, and I hate even saying this because I know it's kind of too early and it might be an overreaction on a Sunday evening, but this BYU game could be one of the most important games telling where this team's at. Are they really going to kick it in gear? Are they really going to show us who they are on Saturday and really stomp BYU and really put their foot down and hold them to 14 points? I mean, this is a kind of a statement game. I know it's BYU, but you got to look moving forward where you're going to have to treat this like a Kent State, Western Carolina game because, look, just like I said last week or the week before, I can't remember if you're in a 4-quarter battle against BYU and you got that 4-game stretch coming up, that I'm telling you, and all of them are on the road, that's going to be brutal. They need to really put their foot down and really get this game out of hand. They need to take control of this game. O-line's got to block because they need to really prepare, not look ahead, but you kind of got to if you're looking ahead in that SEC schedule.
Yeah, because I know that we both said that, the BYU game was kind of the final dress rehearsal before you get into SEC play. It's where you don't have any more questions. You figure out who's starting here, who's moving here, and now there's still just so many questions. I know yesterday, I think the quote from Pittman was that the O-line wasn't the reason we weren't running. And I'm just I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, but, we're seeing too many defenders pushing our guys back. It doesn't seem like on some of their pulls that they're pulling quick enough. I just don't know if they're, just running basic blocking schemes, that they're almost a half step too slow with it.
Yeah. But that goes back to what we were talking about was, you should be able to fire off the line and push these guys back. The talent, you're looking at the talent, and that's where I draw the line of one. I can understand maybe a drive or a series here and there where you're kind of not taking off, but you just don't have your best. But there's got to be a time where you got to get some fire. You got to get some push. You've got to get to the place where you're like, all right, enough's enough of this.
Yeah.
We're playing like crap. That's where you see those games that, okay, we're done playing around with them. It's 21-7 at the half, and then let's turn it into a 66-17 game. That's what should have happened yesterday. Things are going to happen. You're going to, especially with this new clock thing, it's going to happen. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to a quick break. After the break, we will continue our conversation, and we'll talk about all the other things going around in the SEC. We'll catch you after the break.
Attention DIYers and home improvement enthusiasts. Are you searching for the right tools and the supplies to tackle your next project? Look no further than Mentor's Hardware Store. With locations in Ozark, Alma, and Clarksville, our vast selection of hardware and building materials is sure to have everything you need, whether you're fixing a leaky faucet or building a new deck. Plus, our knowledgeable staff is always on hand to offer expert advice and guidance. And with our competitive prices and convenient online ordering, Mentor's Hardware Store is your one-stop shop for all your DIY needs. Visit us today and let's build something amazing together. Are you in need of legal representation? Look no further than the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson. As the oldest law firm in the River Valley, we have been serving our clients for over 100 years, with locations in Ozark, Fort Smith, and Spring. Our experienced team of attorneys provide expert guidance and advocacy in a wide range of legal areas, including personal injury, family law, criminal defense, and more. Trust in our history and experience to get the results you deserve. Contact the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson today at 479-782-8813. That's 479-782-8813. Are you looking for a place to grab a cold drink and some delicious food? Look no further than Arkansas Brewing Company. Located at 201 South 1st Street in beautiful downtown Ozark, our establishment offers a wide selection of craft beers and tasty eats. But what sets us apart is our welcoming atmosphere and friendly staff. At Arkansas Brewing Company, you'll always feel like part of the family. So visit Destiny and Christopher Brockett and staff today and see for yourself what makes us the go-to spot for locals and visitors alike. Arkansas Brewing Company, come for the drinks and stay for the friends. Searching for premium brewery products that will take your daily routine to the next level? Look no further than Sterling Soap Company. Our handmade soaps, aftershaves, and balms are made with only the finest ingredients that give you the ultimate grooming experience. With a variety of scents to choose from, there's something for everyone. Plus, our products are crafted in small batches to ensure the highest level of quality. So why wait? Visit www.sterlingsoap.com or visit our retail store at 16 West Walnut Street in Paris, Arkansas. Shop our collection and discover the difference for yourself. Upgrade your grooming routine with Sterling Soap Company.
And want to welcome you back to the Hog Talk podcast. And going around the SEC, we're talking about, the struggles that were with the SEC. And I tell you what, I don't know where if you want to talk about, the Alabama Texas game. I know we kind of touched on it, but man, what happened? Or you would talk about a team that keeps on saying they're there and they're not. But man, for Texas A&M to get beat by Miami the way they are, and I will kind of, if I have any chance, I know the whole Club Dub video after the win yesterday don't help my case any, but ACC is kind of 4-1 against the SEC right now. So, I mean, if we're going to talk about some moral victories, man, I don't know what is happening with the SEC this year and their struggles. I mean, it really is crazy.
It is. It's kind of baffling. In that same group chat with some buddies, the question has been raised numerous times over the last couple of days of what is going on in the SEC. I don't have an answer. I mean, even when you go down the ranks and you look at, Mizzou beat Middle Tennessee State yesterday by 4 points. And then, I mean, the losses that have happened, it's weird. I don't want to hang my hat on how the end of the season's going to go, like when it comes to the playoff and what's going to happen with Georgia or even what's going to happen with Bama or whoever the rest of the year. But it is a weird time, especially in the early stages when these games, besides some of your top conference versus conference matchups like you've had in the years past, like this year and last year with LSU and Florida State, some of the big ranked matches, there are some games out there. It's just been dreadful to watch, even whether you're a fan or not.
Well, if you look at the most three marquee games, I mean, Florida State beating LSU, Texas A&M beat Miami, and then, of course, Texas beating Alabama. It's like those juggernauts are that top. Other than I'm going to throw Georgia out of it because they don't play anybody. They never have, and they finally will next year. And that's the way it is. So, I mean, but you even look at Tennessee. I mean, 30-13 against Austin Peay. And I know South Carolina ended up routing Furman, but there for a while.
Well, I think Kentucky only won by like 7 or 10 or something like that.
Yes, that right. Yeah, Eastern Kentucky.
There it is.
Well,
I mean, a lot of these games are going into. I mean, they're even some of these blowout or higher scoring games for the SEC. They're starting off super slow. That it's taken until the third, fourth quarter for these teams to pull away.
And I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's collectively how they're doing the training, how, are they starting later? Are they starting, Auburn barely beating Cal, 14-10. Again, Mississippi State holding on to beat Arizona 31-24. So we're seeing a lot of – it's just something, I guess, what we're not used to. We're not used to seeing the SEC struggle because all we hear is, SEC's the best, and there's a strong argument that they're not the best as of right now.
Well, you've got eight teams from the Pac-12 are in the top 25 now. That's tied for the most with the SEC having 8 teams at one time. And they don't even have 2 teams that are going to be in the conference next year, but they got 8 ranked right now. But I don't know if you even look at the transfer portal. These guys that aren't getting to play at Georgia or at Bama or at wherever, and so they don't want to wait 1 to 3 years to play there. So they're finding a school that's going to let them play here and now, and we're starting to see people with open arms saying, "Come to us," and we're seeing them go.
And when we started in on this whole NIL and the transfer portal team, you look at the teams that are trying to be stubborn and try to do things their own way and not take advantage of whatever you think that your name's going to get you.
Clemson
and Alabama. I mean, But you look at the top two, you look 5 years ago, Clemson and Alabama 4 years in a row were having a battle, of who was the national champion in the college football playoff and meeting in the semifinals of the national championship game. Alabama beat them twice and Clemson beat them twice, and then you see Georgia come in and win back-to-back. And yes, they haven't. I mean, a lot of people are like still, I say in a sense, disrespecting them, but it's not disrespect because you can't. They've won back-to-back national championships, but it's almost like you can't. In essence, you're playing because you got to talk about when Clemson had their run. Everybody's talking about playing an ACC schedule. Well, that's the only reason why. Well, that's what Georgia's done. Georgia played the same kind of schedule outside of Tennessee. Or outside of Georgia, the SEC East is the ACC. So we got to hold them to that standard. I know that makes Georgia fans mad, but it is what it is.
It's the truth.
You got to call a spade, but now that's all what's holding on to this conference is Georgia because we've seen other teams struggle, and so when all of them struggling, you're looking at these high-powered offenses, and you thought, Texas A&M is going to set the world on fire, and but what does that say? Other teams are finally catching up because look at Colorado. I think they said in the Colorado TCU game that all the touchdowns that were scored in that game were by transfer portal players. And if you look at the game, Colorado put it on Nebraska. I don't know what more they've got to do to get more respect. I know they're the darlings. I know they're the darlings, and everybody wants to see them win, but there's still very few that thought they were going to win yesterday.
Yeah.
Media-wise,
yeah. Well, so here's my question, and maybe this is what Colorado is going to have to do, or it's what they're doing right now. It's like every game so far, and I know there's only been 2, but there's been a revenge factor to the game. It's been somebody wronged me. Somebody said something about my dad. Some coach didn't look at my son. And so it's like, and I'm not saying those aren't legit reasons or legit things, but you're going into all these games. I mean, and it's working for them with this chip on your shoulder, whether it's made up or not. You're just, it's like, well, that coach disrespected my dad, so I'm coming out to show him something. And then the game before, a lot of the stock doesn't come up until after the game. So it just makes me wonder.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. And here's the deal: when you're the underdog, and you're going to hold on to any little thing, bulletin board material that you can. That's only going to get you to the top, right? All right. So once you get to the top, what do you have? What do you have that's going to keep you at the top? That's where Nick Saban come up that rat poison and really the players are buying into this and that, the rat poison. Well, that's going to get you so far because what's going to happen when you do play USC and if you happen to get blown out? I mean, they're going to end up losing a game. They're not going to go undefeated. But that's what's it's all cool, and I'm riding the train. I want them to win. I want to see Dion have success there. But I want to see what happens after they lose the game. That's really going to show me. You can keep saying these things, and Michael Jordan said it best. We can always talk crap when we're up 3-0 or we're up 4-0. Where was that talk at when we were behind and coming back? And I think that's what's really going to happen when they get beat. How are they going to respond? Like when I get beat, say they get beat by 21 by USC. How are they going to respond to that? Deflating that balloon and really humbling them. Humbling them. And seeing how they respond. And that's how you right there, you could tell how a team is. And that's where last year with Arkansas, I thought they were going to have so much promise. And when they got that win, and then you've seen the last couple of games down the stretch, it's just like they kept on going to these roller coasters. And it's like you want to see them be able to bounce back from adversity and kind of run the table the rest of the way and have a 7, 8, 9. You're not losing these 2-point games to Liberty and losing these games to Missouri. That's what I want to see out of Arkansas is keep getting better. I want to see next week making up for their performance last week and getting better against BYU.
Oh, yeah. And just one more touch on Coach Prime and Colorado, and that's probably all I'll say about them is I know a lot of people are rubbed the wrong way by the success or how Deion Sanders approaches things. But what he's doing and what Colorado's done, in my opinion, it's good for college football. Him succeeding like he is good for college football. I look at the landscape of football, and even like Miami beating Texas A&M yesterday. When Miami is good, college football is better.
Exactly.
And it's like you've heard years past when Arkansas is on the up and up that a lot of your national media outlets all agree when Arkansas is better, college football. It's those teams that when they're better, college football as a whole is better. And Deion, and I'm not saying Colorado is one of those teams, but what Deion is doing, his presence is good for the sport. It's getting eyes on team that nobody was looking at before. So that's just another team that has vested interest from the outside world. But I don't know, going into BYU, I mean, whether these guys want to go in with a chip on their shoulder or look at the past couple of games, or especially just yesterday's game, and just, I mean, disgusted. Maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, with how they performed in some aspects. I don't know what kick in the pants that they need.
Yeah.
So they've got to find something before Saturday.
And and that's the thing. I agree with you. I don't think they need an outside motivation. They should be able to motivate themselves enough to be like, all right, this is what we need to change. That's what the preseason's for. I think that's what, your preseason and fall camp, summer camp, all these, practices, that's where it comes time to you do the work, you do the practicing. If you're going into these games and you're an SEC team and you're struggling against Kent State, you should be able to motivate yourself to turn things around next week and really put it on BYU. I don't think there should be a coach speech from, Sam Pittman, or bring in a former player or motivate. You shouldn't have to motivate them to go out and beat BYU.
Yeah. And I mean, if anything, you've got to protect your house because you went to BYU's last year and beat them. So if anything, BYU's coming into your house with a chip on their shoulder. So you've got to be ready for potentially a dogfight. I hope it's not, but BYU's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder for what Arkansas did last year.
If you let BYU come in and you give them that motivation of that inkling of BYU comes in, they're overlooking us. We're going to prove it to them that they shouldn't overlook us. They shouldn't sleep on us. They're looking ahead to Texas A&M or LSU. You give them that fire and you give them the talent that they have. This is a Power 5 school. This isn't some cupcake team that you should have blown out 45-10. Yeah, you'll be in a dogfight. And if you're in a dogfight in this game, I don't know what that's going to do to when we're talking about their motivation and, not only physically, but mentally. What is that going to do to them knowing that they had to play a hard-fought 4-quarter game, and you can't help but look ahead of those next 4 games? And what's that going to do to you preparing for those games. That's why I really emphasize the fact that they need to come out, take care of business, and really hold on and let their offense come up, because their defense is playing good. Their defense is their bright spot, and they keep playing the way they are against BYU defensively, they're going to hold them. But I don't want it to be where Arkansas's got to have to win. They have to score 35, 38 points to win the game. That's what I'm getting at on that.
And I really, questioned yesterday were they already looking ahead when they came into this game. And I think to an extent that's a possibility until we see kind of the same offensive line issues that we saw the prior week. So I don't think it's necessarily them looking ahead. I just think it's whatever the issues are, they haven't figured it out yet.
And that could all be there. And this is where another little silver lining of that run attack is. Maybe it's because you think their pass blocking's been great. And I said that last week. Okay, that kind of gives me hope that their run blocking is going to be okay. They're going to finally come around to it. But you look how AJ Green looked. That you're not giving it to a rocket that's just going to try to barrel through these holes. You got you a shifty back right there in AJ Green, and I think you got to give him a lot more touches. Let him be that primary back, because again, when we look at matchups, how does this team match up? Just because you put your second guy in there doesn't mean that he's not a starter, because he is.
And one thing, like talking about using the tight ends, using guys over the middle, and what I kind of thought we might see Satania used a little more on the offensive side, whether it be over the middle or deep, because we already know he has track speed. I mean, that's on record. But just think back to the Deion Stewart, Jared Cornelius, and the end arounds, and some of the little gadget plays, but those, as fast as those guys were, they worked in a pinch.
Yeah, and
it just gave you a different element to your offense.
And when you have Tesla, you got a sure guy that you can take chances. Now that's the one for sure thing. Now that when we talked about this team this year, and KJ having a guy that he can go to, Haas, he looked promising. Like if you need a tight end, he was making some good catches. When you look at Tesla, he's that guy that when he drops a pass, he really takes it to heart. And I think they got away with a little pass interference that he did drop, but. There's a lot of bright spots. I know we've talked about it almost seems like we're talking like they lost the game, but in a game that when you only win 28-6, it's almost like you're treating it as a loss, because you should have done better. And I've always been one to hold on to the hope. All right, let's see how they do. But it's, now it's because this year's so important. This is the year, because look, we don't know for sure what Jacoby's going to be next year. But you know what you have now, and you can't, if you're wanting to really say that you've got two Heisman hopefuls or two what you want to call All-American guys in your backfield, you can't treat this. We can't go back to the days where you had Darren McFadden. You're going 6-6, 7-6. You got to sit there, and you've got to make this an 8-9 win year and carry on that momentum, because you've got guys that you've got committed, but they ain't signed on that dotted line yet, who are looking at this.
And that's one big thing to me is these guys that I know we're high up on these 25 and 26 commits, but that's a long time between now and then. And you string together a 4 or 5 game, losses in a row. Some of these guys are going to see that and just be like, you know what? I'm going to open up my recruiting again. And I think that, they've got to stay at 8+ wins to keep these guys, especially when they're that far out. So I think that we're at a point, especially getting these guys that we've gotten so far in 2025 and 2026, like you can't take steps back like this.
And the transfer portal too. How much of that, what you've been able to kind of take away from the transfer portal and benefit from that I can go and maybe become a better player, maybe get drafted at Arkansas. Well, Texas is coming to the league. Look what they just done. Look what Sark's done there in a few years there at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Catalan. I mean, as bad as that would look, Jordan Dominic at Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the bright shining stars on defense yesterday for Colorado. It was all over the place. I think he had a sack, forced fumble, or he played a real key part in that defense yesterday. But when you look at these guys who are going to other places and they're doing just as, I mean, that could start to pick on when Pittman starts calling these guys in the transfer portal. Are they going to start going other places?
Yeah. Because, I mean, and that's one thing, like, I was thinking about it last night during the games and seeing Catalan up there and Herb Street was talking about him. And, I'm just, this, of course, isn't like the first or second quarter, but I'm like, wouldn't it be something for Catalan to have been here and never to have beaten Bama and then to go there and get it? And he did.
I know. And it's tough because, you always, and because it was who he was. He was,
wholeheartedly.
That's the tough pill to swallow. In any other school, it was Texas. So on top of your guy now gets to say he beat Bama and he went to Texas. I mean, that can have a lingering effect on the recruiting and the transfer portal years to come. But I mean, that's why my last thought on it for this show is we got to turn things around against BYU. You can't make this a 4-quarter game. And you've got to put your foot down and really, when you have them, don't let them have any chance of coming back. Get, and make this where you're playing maybe 3 3/4 and get your guys out, get them healthy and get them ready for this next 4 weeks after the BYU game.
Yeah, this is definitely a game I think you have to come into and just scream dominance and just force and everything else, just to show yourself who you are, but show everybody else that, maybe yesterday was just a fluke.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start with a new format. We usually go an hour on our shows, but we have some kind of things that may be coming up for the Hog Talk podcast coming up in the future. We kind of teased a little bit about it of what we might be able to do. So from here moving forward on our hour-long shows, we're going to be cutting them down to 48 minutes, and then we're going to be doing multiple shows throughout the week and cutting those down to 24 minutes. So we're not going to be able to do the hour-long shows, and when we know those details and we can share them, likely here in the next couple of months, we'll be able to share that with you. But Adam, if you got anything else, man, I'll wrap it up.
No, just enjoy the cooler weather that is finally coming upon us.
All right. Well, that will do it for another episode of the Hog Talk podcast. For Adam Hall, I am Porter Hayes, and we will catch you this week with another episode of the Hog Talk podcast.